I'm your host Anis Asif. This is ZMC Network and you're watching The Real Story, discussing the issues that affect you. On today's show we have two guests, Muhammad Ali and Ali Mujahid. Would you like to tell us a bit about yourselves, guys?
Thank you. My name is Muhammad Ali. Everyone calls me Mr. Ali because I was a science school teacher, so the name has stuck, and I'm heavily involved with young people through my football academy, JABS B8FC, which stands for Juniors Academy of Birmingham Sports, and also through Alumrock Community Forum.
Halim?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Halim Mujahid. I'm a chair of governors at Osborne Nursery School and also a community activist, and a director at Simply Skills, and play a big role in the education of young people.
Welcome to the show, guys.
No, thank you. Thank you for having us.
And our topic today is that which is very controversial locally as well as nationally, and that's knife crime. What are your thoughts on knife crime?
Well, it was in the news over the weekend, wasn't it? We had the BBC One Extra show here in the Arena Stadium. One of the big headline acts, DJ Krept, was actually slashed or stabbed behind the scenes. So, you know, you can't hide away from that. Knife crime is a real everyday issue. So, you know, it's a real fear among young people, the fact that they are at some point will come across someone that may stab them or slash them. And it's a real concern. And, you know, when I remember when I was growing up, you know, we didn't even have any thoughts about, you know, being a victim of knife crime. But the reality is such that unfortunately now, you know, there's a lot of people, whether it's through fear or through, you know, this sort of gangster lifestyle, they feel it.
Do you not feel that it's glamorized a lot on, especially, you know, forums like obviously these social media sites, and obviously these high profile figures such as the rap stars and R&B stars, and a lot of these movies and, you know, the series they've got on Netflix, a lot of it's to do with drugs and guns. And
well, it's a whole sort of culture, isn't it? That, you know, whether it's through the rap shows or whether it's through the online Facebook channels, that it's cool to carry something. You know, I know it's mostly guns, but knife crime is more of a sort of street level kind of a sort of a knife to carry, instrument to carry. And people don't realize at some point that if you are going to be carrying a knife, you're more likely going to be a victim yourself rather than you doing anything at all. So, you know, it's a strong message that we need to you know, send out there.
Sure.
You know, you may be fearful, but don't carry a knife crime, but you will be the victim.
I think with what's happened over the weekend, I think we can all agree that it's not sending a right message to young people, especially when celebrities and rap artists and these high profile figures who young people look up to are involved in this kind of behavior. It's not really giving a good image to our young people. And I think if you speak to young people now out there, the reason they're carrying knives is because they feel scared.
Absolutely.
They're fearful for their lives. They feel safe carrying a knife.
Yeah, but do you not think it's like an image they're trying to portray as well with carrying a knife, not just obviously out of fear? You know, it's like a status symbol. Do you not think? The
hard man life. So they're trying to, you know, like on social media, for instance, they'll be trying to portray the hard man image, but you know, and then a little argument online, you know, just messaging on videos or commenting on rap videos, and then it goes into a real life violence.
Yeah, I know in the last couple of months, July and August, I know there were 9 knife crime incidents that were portrayed in the news nationally, stabbings. What do you think led to that peak, shall we say, of incidents in that period? Because obviously we're in October now. That was only a couple of months ago. What do you think was the catalyst for that sort of development?
I think it's a difficult sort of question to answer as to what one thing may have led to that increase in that sort of, you know, 2 or 3 month period. We do know over the last 6 years there's been a doubling of incidents of knife crime, but in terms of why that's happened over a short period of time, you can put it down to many reasons. I firmly
Austerity
believe.
cuts.
I firmly believe that if you've got a visible presence of police officers on the street driving around, you feel a lot more reassured, and you're less likely to do any kind of crime.
I'm sure as you're growing up, Ali, you must have come across these beat officers.
Of course.
A lot more street policing.
But do you think the recent cuts, I think there were 2,000 police officers that were cut from the West Midlands Police Force recently?
That's right, not recently, over the last 10 years they've been cut. Now what we're doing is, there's been a reported incident, they're going to reinvest those officers that were cut back over the last 10 years, but the damage is being done. Those victims are living with those injuries or have passed away. And for them, it's too late.
It affects the whole families as well. Absolutely. It affects the victims getting a job. They feel
the
confidence levels have dropped immensely.
Yeah, but do you think, obviously, a lot of it, with the individuals that are involved, they're in their, you could say, mid-20s and younger. A lot of the incidents are from the mid-20s to obviously them being younger than that age group. So do you feel that, obviously, from up to the age of 25, it's more... it's more visible in that age group as it is as opposed to somebody over 25?
That's
do you
right.
think? What factors do you think would sort of lead an individual to sort of, go down that route, shall we say?
So I think the key sort of age range is anyone sort of under the age of 30. That not only are they the ones that are going to be perpetrating the crime, but they're also going to be the victims of crime. But what I would also suggest is the startling sort of statistic for me is the huge number of school children.
For me, as a primary school children who were carrying knives or being victims, that was a 70% increase.
That's right.
Since 2012.
So you had 45 people that were actually injured of knife crime that are under 11 years of age. 11, they should be thinking about how they're going to spend their playtime or what movies they're going to watch when they come home.
About carrying a knife.
No, absolutely. So I think maybe the fact that we live in our sort of little bubble, we don't know what's happening on the street. What these young children are going through every day. And as parents, how hand on heart, how many of us do we know what our kids are up to in their bedrooms or when they're on the street or when they come home? Do we?
So what do you think it is? Is it more the parents' responsibility, or is it society in general?
No. I think parents are the first point of call. They need to know where the children are, what they're doing, who they're hanging around with, and why do they not know that their child is carrying? And also, when they are carrying, you got to look at your kitchen cupboards. If there's a knife missing,
but Ali,
it's true.
I think you've made a point of obviously families being aware of what's going on with the children, but I don't think they know as to what level or what sort of situation the children are in.
That's what we're saying. They ought to. It's all very well me blaming you, blaming the police, the government, the council, but ultimately, if anything happens to my child, or to our child, who's going to suffer the most? It's me as a parent, it's you as a parent.
Do you think that we need to put steps in place to make the children feel like they can approach their parents? Because obviously there's obviously boundaries, there's restrictions with children and obviously parents and what they feel comfortable with discussing. Do you not think we should have like an intermediary, like in a lot of these schools they have programs going on where they've got mentors, personal tutors, mentors, etc., where the children can open up and discuss issues that obviously they're going through in their lives. Maybe they wouldn't feel as comfortable to discuss them with their parents or with an elder, because obviously there's that boundary that a parent and a child, there's that level where they can't fully open up to discuss things that they're going through.
And if you were talking about puberty or sex, I would say there's that you feel a bit shy of sort of maybe touching that subject. But this is an everyday issue. Your child may be a victim. He may see something. And I think it's our responsibility first and foremost to have that conversation, treat your children like adults and have that conversation and just let them know the dangers and not hang around with any kids that may be leaning that way.
The reality is different though, because obviously children don't tell their parents. So do you not think we should put an intermediary in place to obviously combat that issue? Because it is an issue. Parents don't know what's going on.
Talking about a nanny state now, I mean, I don't know whether I would agree. Then, you might as well just dissolve any responsibility of all parents.
It's not about responsibility, it's about giving the child that that comfort zone where they can approach somebody and discuss issues
Well,
that they might feel conflicted to discuss with their parents.
Well, you got
at least
school- you got school for that.
previously there was a lot of youth clubs, youth centres,
Which obviously have been,
Yeah.
you know.
which were around where people could go.
But you haven't got as many youth clubs as you would have had, say, 10 years ago, with the cuts they've made in funding,
Yeah.
you know, with other issues, social issues, you know, going on in the communities. You know, there's no funding, there's no way of getting kids
Yeah, no, you're right. No, absolutely.
into
I
an
think there's-
environment like that anymore. It's
you
not
know-
as easy as, you know, say 10 years ago when the government were backing these sorts of schemes. You know, with all the cuts that they've made, obviously they've sort of kind of shirked back on that sort of responsibility they've got to the younger generation.
Yeah, I think the lack of youth centres and youth sort of facilities and workshops are inextricably linked with the rise of knife crime and young people getting into
all sorts of crime, youth
absolutely,
crime.
absolutely.
Yeah,
So-
because when they're in a controlled environment like that, in a youth club, for instance, as opposed to being on the streets, you know, they've got that, you know, they've got that security there, have they not, to a degree?
No, I agree. But at the same time, that still doesn't mean that they will open up to a school teacher or to a young sort of social worker or youth centre worker about what their fears are or what they may be carrying, you know. And I still think that, you know, as parents we need a responsibility and let's not absolve our parents'
It's not about
responsibility.
absolving the parents from the responsibility. It's about giving that child that comfort zone where they've got the ability to discuss issues that they might not feel comfortable to discuss with their parents.
Nice, I think we need to educate our parents as well on how to deal with this topic.
I agree.
Yeah, because it's a topic that's a big issue in inner city areas as well. And what you've got to ask yourself is, why is there so many ethnic minority people who are the victims of knife crime?
It's predominantly obviously in the more deprived areas that you're getting a lot of these incidents, but with areas like that, then you'd question, you know, obviously the government's role, what sort of funding is in place, you know, if they've got initiatives going on, you know, if there's anything there to protect the youth, policing, you know, all the other factors that might be around their drugs, you know, violence. You know, a lot of these children, you know, they're not from, how would you put it, the normal perceived family home. They're from broken homes, possibly. They're from one-parent families. You know, they've got issues going on around them, violence, drugs, you know, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, things like that. So I think when a child's in that environment where they're exposed to these sorts of things, then it would make you question, obviously, what sort of route they're going to take with, you know, knife crime, the increase in knife crime, the increase in you know, gun crime, for instance, and then you've got other factors going on, drugs, and, you know, these other things that are going on, gang culture, for instance, as well. Which is very big in inner city Birmingham and, say, London, Manchester.
It's everywhere. There's, you know, the gang culture is spreading, turf wars is happening between our young people. But what we need to think about is how we can resolve this issue. So, you know, as Mr. Ali said, the lack of youth clubs, the lack of youth centres. But David Jamieson has been giving a lot of funding.
So, who's David Jamieson?
The Police Crime Commissioner for West Midlands, been giving a lot of funding towards educating young people, educating parents as well. So I think we got to say some positives as well.
So the problem that has now been acknowledged and identified, but now that we need to have the right strategy to make sure it filters down to the groups who are working at grassroots level, really, you know, rather than a lot of the top level who slice it and you know, it doesn't filter down to the ground level. And also I want to sort of pick you up on your point, Halim, whereby you said it's more of a ethnic sort of a problem. What I would say is, I think it's across the board. You know, any deprived inner city area will have knife crime. You know, and unfortunately, and what I would also put it down to is, you know, why Birmingham and London are sort of the two leading cities as to why there's been an increase is because I think the police powers. Sorry, let me make this point. Why? It's because the police have now been targeted as being racist when they do disproportionately go to Asians and black people to say, look, I want to do a search on you because there's been a reported case of someone carrying a crime. Or sort of they're now scared to do it.
Yeah, but Ali, you're you know, there are other factors you should consider, because it's not just, you know, obviously the issues with the police. There are groups of youths going around on the streets, and you know, if the police, if they see a group of say 10 individuals walking down the street, they are going to stop them, are they not?
No, but for the last few years they weren't, because they were crying racist.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're targeting us because we're black, because we're Asians, because we're Muslims. You know, for me, you know, if I'm a law-abiding citizen, I want the police, if they've got, you know, operating within the law, you search anyone if you've got reasonable suspicion,
that's
regardless of your background.
That's a separate issue.
Separate issue. I think it's a main issue.
Let's continue back onto.
If you're going to get 3 years for carrying a crime, I want people being searched. I want people being sentenced.
Yeah, let's get back to the issue at hand. Okay, let's discuss obviously the issue in respect of sentencing, possibly.
Yeah.
Because obviously the law, you know, with knife crime, if obviously a lot of these incidents, you've got serious incidents taking place, stabbings, you know, murders, linked to knife crime, to gun crime, but I don't think the sentences reflect the
but what I would do is, Anis, if I can interject here, sentences is reactionary. I would rather work on prevention first. How do you prevent? You mentioned about education, but I'm saying, you know, if someone's carrying a knife, you know, and you got reasonable suspicion, they should be searched.
Yeah, they should be. Yeah.
And, you know, and we should encourage that. We should, you know, ask our police officers go and actually actively, you know, search young people.
But do you not think we should bring in a system or, you know, an organisation to speak to these youths as opposed to going down that route? Because when you've got a police officer approaching an individual, he's carrying a knife. What reason has he got behind that to carry that knife?
There should be no reason.
Yeah, no. But you don't know if he's fearful if there's 10 individuals waiting around the corner to attack him. You don't know if he's got, you know, issues at school from bullying. You don't know if he's been mugged before and those same guys are, you know, going after him again.
No, that's a good question. Why we should be thinking why the children are carrying these knives.
Exactly.
But that's not you can't condone anyone.
Not Ali, there's no condoning it, but you need to understand why would somebody carry the knife in the first place. If it's linked to, you know, the glamorization of, you know, gang culture and all the rest of it on the TV, etc., that's fine, and you know, that's not a justified reason. If it's linked to protecting yourself,
that's okay.
No, it's not okay, but obviously you should look at that and you should think, why is the individual going down that route to feel like he has to carry a knife when he knows what he's doing isn't right, to protect himself? So we need to educate these children to say this is not the way to go. We need to say this is the right way to go. These are the channels to follow. If he's not getting the support, you don't know what issues this child's gone through. You don't know the mental capacity he's got. You don't know obviously what sort of mental issues he might be going through, you know, the fear, the worry, if he's from, you know, a broken home, you know, if there's factors like that in place. You know, you've got to consider all these things before you even go to the end. You've got to look at what has brought this child to the stage where he's feeling it justified to carrying a weapon that obviously legally you're not allowed to carry.
I mean, there's no real answer. It's a very complex situation. But you know, anyone that's carrying a knife, you know, even if they're doing it reactionary for their own safety, we know that they are going to end up as victims. You know. So there's that bit about education. So we need to know that
to prevent them from carrying that knife.
I think personally, my opinion is that we need to, you know, put a system in place to sort of reach out to these individuals, and I think we need to do that. I think that's a, you know, that's grassroots basically, to a level where you're going.
There's got to be more dialogue between parents, children, and the police.
I tell you,
to break that stigma.
I tell you what works well with the kids that I deal with from my football academy is when you've got someone who has been there, done it. You know, who comes in, talks about their story, you know, and that's real life really. Or you have a bit of a role play scenario, or a bit of a, you know, like a play. They can see how things have escalated to the extent where, like you said, whereby they're carrying a knife out of fear. And also then you also flip it whereby you're doing it because you want to look cool in front of your gangs. And then you hear about that. I mean, you're a lawyer, you know, what's that, you know, there's three of us here, but one of us actually take part in that, you know, in the crime, but we all get sentenced the same. You know, I can't remember the actual the term for it, but again, you know, if you're in a gang gang, if one of you perpetrates a crime, all of you will be found guilty.
Yeah.
So I think that message needs to be signalled out to the young people as well. That
I
look,
think more you need to concentrate more on obviously the, you know, what can happen from
absolutely
from your actions basically. There's a lot of these children, they don't see, you know, the consequences of what they're doing.
Yeah. I think also we tend to forget victims here.
Yeah.
You know, and I think they need to have a strong voice. I'll tell you what's powerful for me is, you know, over the last few years, the victims then go and actually confront the perpetrators in prisons.
Yeah.
This is what you've done to me. This is how much my life has changed. And I think that's very powerful. And if we can also take these victims and get them to go to schools, to youth centres, to football clubs, wherever it may be.
Do some workshops, do some talks around this. I think that'll definitely help.
That will really hit home.
Because I think a lot of these individuals feel alienated from society. Like they can't connect. You know, obviously they're going down a path they shouldn't be going down. I think there needs to be something in place to sort of pull them back in and say, hold on a minute, what are you doing? This is what it would lead to.
It's also linked to other criminal activity that they might be doing. So once they're involved in, let's say, drugs, then, you know, knife crime comes into it, gun crime, all this, it all comes into as together.
Because I think a lot of this, you know, especially this gang culture and, you know, knife culture and gun culture, a lot of it's to do with the older generation, older individuals who are in that particular vice of gang culture, grooming younger children.
Well, it's that intimidation, isn't it? You know, you use a knife to intimidate them into sort of, you know, maybe, you know, having that country lines or county lines of sort of that drug route. And once you know that they're in your control and in your influence, you know, they will then inevitably will carry a knife in order to protect themselves and maybe
it's making a name for themselves, or they're protecting their name.
But I think a lot of it's to do with obviously the term that you would obviously associate it with is street cred. So, but I think that needs to be sort of downplayed, because a lot of these communities, you've got these grime artists, a lot of the local artists, grime artists, these individuals, they portray it as the life to live.
They think
and
it's
when
cool.
you're from when you're from a deprived background, you know, you want that life. And you know, if you look at it through, say, a 10-year-old's eyes, a 12-year-old's eyes, a 14-year-old eyes, he wants that car, he wants those expensive clothes, he wants that gold chain, he wants those people around him. You know, it's that image that's portrayed, but the negativity.
It's vulnerable people who going into.
I think it's not just been in a deprived area, because I grew up in Alum Rock, Lozells, Handsworth, Perry Bar sort of area. You know, so we've all grown up those areas that we term as deprived and, you know, poverty stricken, but we've done okay. So it's not just necessarily being grew up in these areas, but I think it's on your home environment. If that is relatively safe and secure, and we know it's not in every case, but if that is secure, then you've got a less chance of then sort of deviating. So it starts from home, and then we have got different agencies, youth centres, schools, police, that also can then sort of support that network. And I'm going to keep on reinforcing.
It's come back to parents.
No, I think so.
I agree with you to a degree, but you know, when a child feels like he can't connect or he can't open up to his parents, then, you know, there is that boundary between a child and a parent. And, you know, there's certain things a child would not feel comfortable discussing with his parent that he might feel comfortable discussing in confidence, of course, with a third party who can relay that information to the parents. So I think there needs to be that sort of intermediary to be put in place to sort of obviously tackle this issue. Because a lot of parents don't understand, you know, that's it, you know, he's doing wrong. They don't see the circumstances of things, and then obviously it leads to other things.
Absolutely. I think with that is, I think there's an element of trust.
I'm going to have to stop you there, Ollie. Okay guys, we're going to take a short break. We'll see you back in a few. Thank you.